Now moving to item 13, support for businesses affected by COVID-19. And I will just ask you to scroll up, Sandra, because there are a number of Chair's recommendations that I will take people through. You can't see them all on one screen, unfortunately. But I think I'll ask for the presentation first by staff, and then I will go through the Chair's recommendations. So I'll hand over to Aaron Matic and Andrew Duncan from our financial policy team. Gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Businesses in Auckland have been hit pretty hard by the latest lockdowns, and in particular in the hospitality sector and retail. And while there was a pretty strong rebound last time, we've had a longer lockdown. It's not clear when it's going to finish. Businesses are under greater stress and they're facing more uncertainty. They've got impacts on their revenue, major impacts in their retail and hospitality sector, but they still have to pay their wages and their rent. And of course the council charges, but our rates and fees for licences are pretty small scale in the context of the other challenges they're facing. They're getting support from the government through the wages subsidy and the resurgence payment. And the council has already responded, as we did during the last lockdown. We've suspended our debt collection for levels 4 and 3. We've waived and extended our fee charges for, and particularly in the hospitality sector, allowing some fast track applications. We've got our ongoing rate support via payment plans and the waiver of penalties when people are asking for payment plans and complying with those. There's also we're communicating our support, making it easy to see on our web page and through our Auckland what forms of support we provide, and highlighting access to assistance from Auckland, assistance and advice from Auckland Unlimited. And we're communicating this through Heart of the City, an updated web page, and through the business improvement districts. Our report looks at a few options and some additional things we can do. Now, our report considers extending the rates postponement scheme that was available through the emergency budget, the COVID-19 rates postponement scheme. Officers aren't recommending that. We note that rates are paid in most part by the landlords, and they're a small part of business costs, and there was a low uptake last time. We've noted we can't do fee waivers, and particularly alcohol fees, because of the way the legislation is written. But we are extending street trading licensing periods for a time equal to the lockdown. We're waiving the fees, application fees and street trading rents while we're in level 2 or higher, out to a maximum of 6 months. Obviously, we've got the continuation of the suspension of debt collection. We're remitting penalties where people have gone into payment arrangement with us. So these are the key things that the paper covers, and myself, Aaron and James Hassel from Licensing and Compliance here to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm happy to move. Your Worship, do you want a second?
Yep, happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just take you through the Chair's recommendations. The first two are straight from the report, but in my opinion, set the scene. And they are, firstly, note to date, Auckland has been in alert level 4 or 3 for 9 weeks and 2 days. And Crown Treasury estimates a restriction on economic activity in alert level 4 of between 26 and 30%. And in level 3 of 15 to 20%. Recommendation B is also a note straight from the report, and it notes that Council's Chief Economist estimates Auckland's GDP loss under level 4 to be $85 to $100 million per day, and $50 to $70 million per day under Alert Level 3. Recommendation C is noting that Council's commitment to support business comes from across the group, including Council Finances team, the Council Finance team, our regulatory department, and of course from Auckland Unlimited. Changes to recommendation D is only slight, but it just notes the support being provided to business by Auckland Council within its roles and responsibilities, and then it lists what they are as per the original recommendations. Reason that has been added is because in essence, actually, the help for business really has to come from government. We are pretty limited in what we can do, but we're doing the best we can. Recommendation E, agree to extend the postponement of rates for ratepayers impacted by COVID-19 scheme to cover the rates for the 21-22 financial year using the same criteria and conditions as set out in Council's rates remission and postponement policy, except that the reference in the scheme to the 26th of March 2020 are to be read as 17th of August 21, noting that the applications under the scheme will be required to be made before the 31st of December this year, and rates assessed in the 21-22 year will be able to be postponed until the 30th of June 23 at the latest. Applications will be accepted from ratepayers who owned their property as at 17th of August, which of course was the beginning of this lockdown, or after this date only where the council is satisfied that the ratepayer purchased their property after the 17th of August and has been impacted by the effects of COVID-19 that couldn't have been reasonably foreseen before the purchase was entered into. Recommendation F, request the government amend relevant legislation to provide for automatic variations to on-licence conditions to support outside dining during COVID restrictions and allow councils to extend alcohol licences at no extra cost. Sandra, there's a bracket in there that needs to go. And that's, of course, the liquor stuff as well. It means that. G, requests the government significantly enhance its business support package for Auckland, given the extended lockdown is placing huge pressure on many Auckland businesses and the need to ensure their ongoing viability, acknowledging the fact that the restrictions imposed on Auckland are to stop the spread of COVID-19 to the rest of New Zealand. So those are the full list of recommendations. I will now start with questions, and I want to start just with one myself. Andrew, I want to ask you if you are in support of the Chair's recommendations, and is there anything that we haven't looked at that we could have in our toolkit to assist business?
So officers do support the Chair's recommendations. We can go and implement these. We would recommend that I can't quite see it, but I think in G we change automatic to temporary. Can we do anything else? No, we've had a good think about it. Council's cost impact on businesses is relatively small, and businesses' big challenge is their revenue impacts and their fixed costs. And these are things the government's much better equipped to deal with than Auckland Council. The government will have been impacted by the shutdown, but when businesses rebound after we get into lower alert levels, then the government's revenue will increase. We'll only get a few more people on the buses. We don't get that GST and income tax benefit. So both our cost impact on business is lower, but our ability to have our revenue move with movements in the economy is far different as well, and therefore our ability to assist in these difficult times is more restricted. And so these recommendations focus on what the council is best equipped to do to help business.
Thank you for that. Next question, Councillor Darby.
Oh, look, it would help. Could we just email the full recommendations, because they're a struggle to read because on the Skype screen. Could we just get those out, please? That's my first question.
Yes, is a quick answer to that.
Sorry, I'll come back to me later, Chair. There's others that would like to engage with you.
I don't have any other questions, to be honest. Councillor?
Yes, you do. There's a couple
do we?
there.
Oh, sorry. I'm getting lost.
Councillor Coombe and myself.
Sorry, okay, Councillor Coombe. Sorry, my thing hasn't scrolled up properly. Councillor Coombe, you're first, and I just want to, I'll talk there with my comment, acknowledge that your work in this space. So I'll go Councillor Coombe and then Councillor Cooper.
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou katoa. Coming in from Grey Lynn here. Thought I'd put my camera on to say hello to everybody. It's great to have this bring together a report that summarises and highlights everything that Council is doing to support business. Just my partai is, do we have anyone from Auckland Transport who can also just talk to what's happening from the transport side and what's being looked at in terms of potential promotions, whether it's, say, free PT on Saturdays or getting people into the city centre or town centres, and also promotions that might be around parking, discounts, just that whole package, because I think this report's really good at highlighting that our CCOs are part of our collective approach, but it's just missing the transport part, which of course we all pay for as well. So do we know, can we get any details about that, or have anyone who can respond to it?
Andrew?
We hadn't engaged with Auckland Transport on that issue, but we can certainly ask our colleagues how their plans might integrate with that and get back to you at a later time.
Great, thank you. And Madam Chair, can I just, I guess a query to you that if AT need any support for them to be doing promotions that might help businesses, that we can follow up on that directly? It won't have to go through a formal resolution.
Look, Councillor, thank you. I mean, this is stage one, really. This is our initial support for business. We'll see what the government comes out with on Friday. And yes, there are other parts of council that will potentially assist too. But the paper, the way it was written from staff to us, it just gave me the licence to extend upon what they had been talking about to date, noting that the three parts of council, Finance, Auckland Unlimited and the regulatory team had contributed and inputted to date.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to reserve my right to make a comment too when the time's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coombe. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Probably James may be able to answer this. Just the, which one is it? Sorry, we're looking at G. In terms of, no, it might be, oh goodness, it's the one about the alcohol licensing anyway, that it be automatic. My understanding is there is a Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act review at the moment, and that would have to be changed to make anything automatic. I mean, this isn't sort of run by council, it's the licensing authority, but James, have you got any comments around that? Because we're talking about making it free for one, if it happens automatically, but under the Act at the moment, you actually have to assess a site when you increase it. So there would be a cost to us, wouldn't there? It says in the financial implications there's no cost, but we will actually have to have staff assessing this and the commissioners having hearings on it.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. Just a couple of things there. The report is talking about the licence under our trading and events and public places bylaw, and there's a little bit of staff time involved in changing the footprint of the outdoor dining areas just for food. But you're right, and the report doesn't go into this in terms of the alcohol licensing. There could be a whole range of different costs. I'd suggested rather than automatic, we change the wording in F to temporary changes to licences. But whatever we do in that space, it will need to come from government in the first instance because a legislative change will be required.
Thank you, James. Madam Chair, could we change that to temporary? Because we're also committed to alcohol harm reduction, and just being able to willy-nilly extend and leave it with no assessment it would kind of be a bit contrary. We need to have a bit of a balance around that, and absolutely understanding this is a really good package to help businesses at the moment, but all of the other resolutions are time limited. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And look, it has been changed. And look, these were being worked on right until just before 10 this morning. So
thank you.
Temporary was a suggestion made by James's team, and I'm sorry that wasn't implemented. So thank you. Councillor Walker.
I've got a question around G, which I thoroughly endorse, which is essentially an advocacy position that we take to government. My question is around the information that's necessary to support that, and it goes to our awareness of how businesses are struggling. Quite obviously, we've got a direct relationship with the owners of properties, who are the people that pay the rates. Of course, we know that in many instances businesses have the rates passed on to them. So what intelligence are we getting? What surveys are we conducting, either on the part of Auckland Unlimited or other parts of council, around the pressures and the financial situation that our businesses in Auckland are in? What do we know that might enable us, and in particular know better, to really reinforce G? So that's a question, Madam Chair.
It is a question. Andrew or Aaron, in your discussions with the AU?
We have talked about the impact on Auckland businesses with AU. Aaron, do we have any specific survey information or further detail from them?
I know that they have, this is something that they have been keeping an eye on. I don't have specifics on what they do have, and it might be something that we get them to follow up with. So I can't answer that specifically.
So we could work with them on a communication to government in response to the direction of the committee in regard to G, to ensure that any information that they did have formed the support for that communicating G to government, and indeed F.
All right, Councillor?
Yes, I just make the observation that we run all sorts of engagement events. We call them Have Your Say. If ever there was a time for businesses to have their say and communicate with us, to tell their stories, to inform us so that we can take up a strong position to government, it's now, and this is not going away. We really need to be as informed as we can be, so we can take as strong a position as we can. So I would urge the people in council to do that. The other question I've got really follows on from the question that Councillor Coombe had around various forms of support, and I put it like this. This issue is so serious that there is a need for this council to have a full-on campaign across Auckland. And this is not just a short-term campaign, it's short-term and medium-term, that's innovative, that picks up on the sorts of things, for example, that Eden Park told us it was doing. Innovative, nimble, imaginative, visionary, stuff that can get people into the businesses in Auckland that need it. And my question is, what sort of a campaign have we got? I don't know at this point. I have not seen a lot other than what appear to be siloed approaches that parts of council are taking. Thank you. So I have a question there.
Andrew, I don't know whether you want to answer that, but it's not really your department, but I know that we have had a Shop Local campaign. Andrew, is anything it's a very good question, but actually it's not in scope of what we're doing right now. But I think we all join your concern around some sort of campaign for business once they are able to get up and operating. So has anyone got any input?
My reason for asking this, Madam Chair, is that campaigns require recognition, they require funding, they require planning, and I'm just asking what we're actually doing. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the Financial Policy Department tries not to do too much visionary stuff. We, however...
Is that an understatement?
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
However, this is a key area of activity for Auckland Unlimited. Certainly we're coming to you with a workshop next week that has some link to Auckland Unlimited's proposed activities for next year. That could be, while that's on the accommodation provider targeted rate, it might be an opportunity to ask them about this particular issue as well, what they're doing in that space, as you'll have them with you in that session.
Yeah, I think this is a finance meeting, so these are financial resolutions, for want of a better word. I would request that the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Dalton bring this up with their work program within the CCO Oversight Committee as a result of further work in this area, and including that of Auckland Transport, as was mentioned earlier. Deputy Mayor, are you happy to do that?
Yeah, it's already started, Madam Chair. It's been working extensively with Nick and Pam and the team around what can be done, bearing in mind that our resources and abilities to actually deliver are not the same as that of the Crown.
Oh yeah, I understand that. Thank you. Councillor Darby, sorry, I lost the thing. Councillor Darby, question from you.
Sorry, Chair, it took me a while to find things there. I appreciate this paper, and this is a good focus. I guess my question is in an area just outside of this paper, and so bear with me, Chair. This paper is limited to the support of business, and business is really good at presenting its case because it's coordinated. It's got lots of people who know how to go to the right places to get attention, and they've got our attention, and that's good and deserving. I'm cognizant of a lot of other Aucklanders who aren't being referred to here, and I'm thinking of Aucklanders even maybe more desperate than business, and that's hard to believe, isn't it? But Aucklanders in the lower socioeconomic demographic, those that are making, for the first time, phenomenal demand on food banks, the stress of our frontline health workers, like never before seen, police included, as well in that area, and our young people who are really socially stressed. They're not at school, they're dropping out of school, online dropping out of school, pressures like that. So I know it's not related to this particular paper, but I actually think we need to the council needs to look at many other areas where there are phenomenal stresses that are equal to and much greater than just business. So, look, I know, Chair, it's not the subject of this paper, but I would hope that somewhere in our organisation we are looking to be advocating and taking action for those other desperate parts of Auckland. Can I just maybe go to, I guess the key officer is our Chief Financial Officer or somebody that might just give us a pointer as to how we might embark on unpacking all those challenges as well and bring them to the table.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Darby. We've focused here on what we believe we've got the ability and the funding and the role to achieve. So under E, we've got the postponement of rates for all ratepayers. But you're right, that doesn't go to a number of the other impacted communities, and our role in that is, as you've indicated, more around advocacy. G is really around that business support package rather than going wider than that at this stage, and that advocacy role is where that would be. A wider paper is, or a wider remit is really a discussion around services that council takes on board and wishes to fund. So quite a big conversation, that one, I believe. Obviously a valid one given the impact that has been felt across the community and not necessarily uniformly.
Look, thanks, Chief Financial Officer, and thanks, Chair, for just giving me a bit of room to discuss this. But look, not for discussion here now, but I think it is something we need to have some discussion on, wider discussion on. But I will hear from my colleagues on that as we discuss this paper, and maybe others are interested in a much broader understanding of the terrific, the phenomenal impacts that this COVID is having on individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And look, when these, as you will be aware, staff put this paper together initially, and when these extra recommendations, when this was being looked at, it absolutely came to everyone's attention that actually this needed to be a wider focus. And there has been some conversations already across the council family about how to do that. I've just seen Councillor Fletcher say, could Finance recommend to governing body the need to give further consideration to the impacts of COVID on Auckland? I mean, I'd be happy to include that. I think there does need to be a bit of a reset. I mean, we're doing it as far as budgets go, but as you say, it's more than budgets, isn't it? It's about the social impacts and other impacts, of course, for all Aucklanders. So, Your Worship, with your indulgence, I'd be happy to accept a H that we recommend to a recommendation to the governing body the need to give further consideration to the impacts on COVID on all Aucklanders. Is that what you mean, Councillor Fletcher?
That's good. That covers
it. Yes, Madam Chair. It's on people. It's on Aucklanders collectively.
Yeah.
Not just Auckland as a physical place. So thank you. If you can accept that as an H, I would be very grateful.
Yeah. On all Aucklanders. On all Aucklanders. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Darby. Councillor Dalton, question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you for these recommendations. I'm assuming there's going to be some comms on this. I think it's really important to get out to all businesses through all of Auckland these recommendations. So it states what as a council, what levers we do have as a council and across our CCOs, and importantly, our advocacy of the role of government in being able to respond to Auckland businesses. And so that we use every tool that we have. Auckland Unlimited have done a good job in their comms, I believe. But from council and perhaps a you as chair in this particular item, to get that out through the business associations, so we're really hitting those businesses that it impacts outside of the city centre, and that we are inclusive of all of Auckland when we get the comms out, or all of these recommendations out, the support that's available. And as councillors have got in behind vaccination programs, that we get in behind what Councillor Walker is suggesting. It requires a campaign of a sort, that we are seen to be supporting our businesses that are suffering, that haven't had as much as they could have perhaps got from government this far. And we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination as yet. So I'd like to have some thought put into what that looks like outside of communicating this particular item throughout Auckland, but also into a campaign to get in behind our businesses as best we can as an organisation.
Yes.
And my question there was, is there going to be comms on it? Thank you.
Isabel, are you on this? You are on this call. Would you like to?
I am here. Short answer is yes. So currently we're communicating to Aucklanders by letting them know what support the council does provide. So we've made that accessible via our website and our Auckland. In terms of a campaign going forward to support local businesses, that is something that would need to be run by Auckland Unlimited.
Yeah, I think also Councillor Dalton was referring that the comms message of our decisions today to business improvement districts as well, and we can do that.
We sure can.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dalton. Any more questions? No, I'll move now to comments, and the first comment I will give to His Worship the Mayor. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Tesley. And it partly relates to what Angela Dalton's just said now. I sent out to some of the central business groupings the efforts that we're making in terms of advocating to government. It occurred to me, listening to you, I should have sent that out to the bids as well. And we need to do that. Just in regard to the recommendations, the Chair and Councillor Coombe and I worked together to try to work out the best way to phrase recommendation G, because I think it really is important to highlight the justification for greater help for Auckland. It's not just Auckland with its hand out. It's Auckland because we carry the burden for the country, one of having the quarantine facilities in our city, and secondly, the restrictions on the city now are designed to protect the rest of the country from COVID spreading from Auckland elsewhere. And some of you will have seen that we hit 102 cases today, of which 94 were in Auckland. So the sacrifice is being made by Auckland for the rest of the country to protect it. And the PM and others around the country have acknowledged that, but that is the justification for more assistance being given to the businesses that are finding it really tough going at the moment. Now, we are getting currently the bulk of the wage subsidy and the resurgence support payments, and that's in excess already of $2 billion that have come to Auckland for that. But those two things on their own, I don't think are sufficient, and I've been raising that at all levels of government, from the Prime Minister to the Minister of Finance and our Liaison Minister Verrill and other ministers. And I've raised it with them on a number of occasions, and I've got emails and texts, etc., demonstrating that, we are in a situation where the longer this lockdown goes on, the more likely it is that businesses that would otherwise be viable will fall over. And the outcome of that has been the announcement by the Minister, which he indicated to me last Sunday, that he'd be making about a package tomorrow. Now, the other lobbying that we've been doing is working with Auckland Unlimited, which is coordinating some of the key business groups, and again, doesn't involve the bids, and perhaps we should have focused on that, but the Auckland Business Chamber, the Employers and Manufacturers Association, Heart of the City, Hospitality New Zealand, Restaurant Association, Retail New Zealand, and Tourism and Māori and Pacifica groups. And the latest that I have from Nick on that is that following their meetings last week with Minister Nash and their conversations with Minister Robertson, there are positive signs that the announcement at 10 o'clock tomorrow will include a number of the things that the businesses have been asking for. Now, I don't know the detail of that, and if I did, I wouldn't be able to tell you in advance of the announcement, obviously. So it's not that we haven't been speaking up for Auckland. We have been. It's just the manner in which we're doing it. It hasn't been designed to stand on a soapbox and use a megaphone. It's designed to go straight to government and say, hey, these are businesses that really need help. And nobody envisaged at the start of this process that 11 weeks on, we would still be under restriction. So I'm hoping that the announcement on Friday in a range of different ways will be helpful. But of course, from the viewpoint of the hospitality, until we get out of this point of level 3, it doesn't make much difference. But part of the announcement tomorrow will indicate the government incentives for businesses coming out of these restrictions, particularly with respect to those who are vaccinated. So I think there'll be some interesting things in the announcement tomorrow, and we're all waiting to see what's going to be said. So I just want to acknowledge Auckland Unlimited, that's been working pretty hard, and you've been getting the weekly reports, which we also forward to government so that they're fully aware of the feedback of how this is hurting Auckland on the ground. We know they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it because it has to be done, but that doesn't make the pain less for those businesses that have been victim to being unable to open in many cases. And it's not just the hospitality industry, it's a whole wide range of retail industries and groups like hairdressers and barbers, etc. So I'm hoping this package will be a step in the right direction, and to the extent that it does help those businesses, we'll applaud it. We'll probably also make the comment that, if this goes on much longer, there'll also need to be more. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And one of the reasons my video is conveniently not working is I could have had 12 chickens in my hair at the moment, so I'm really looking forward to hairdressers being operational. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do want to acknowledge your efforts, Mr Mayor, in communicating with the government, and you haven't made it into anything about you. You've actually worked for Auckland on this, so I really appreciate it. I guess my main comments here are, if you look at it today, it was actually 104 cases today. At the moment, there's 891 active cases in our community, bar half a dozen around the rest of the country. We've got a rolling average of 65 a day, and that really adds up. So for me, this is not going to go away anytime soon. And I've been, even if we get a package tomorrow for businesses, the council has been whacked over and over. Give with one hand, take with the other. One, this taxation issue, the NPSUD, which will require a huge amount of work, as well as the infrastructure we have to provide for extra buildings. The fast track consenting legislation that allows for massive development on places that were never meant for that intensity, hence requiring more infrastructure. All of these changes that are being rushed through government at the moment are going to really affect our ability to help anybody. So I applaud what we can do here. It's not a lot, but we are not in the position to be able to help everybody as much as we'd love to. I mean, that's why we're all in service here. We want to help, but the reality is every time we do something, the money's got to come from somewhere. And I acknowledge it's not going to affect the budgets too much, but there's always going to be that lead lag time where we're receiving that cash flow. So I want to thank our regulatory staff, James, Craig Hobbs and Mervyn, probably for working on this, and our finance team. I don't believe you work in silos, so I was a bit upset to hear that comment by one of the councillors, which was inappropriate. I see our staff trying to work together to do the best they can with the limited resources they've got. So I really am very pleased that we can do this. But I think we're in this for a long haul, and I do hope that if we get something, or businesses get something tomorrow, that's great, and that we get some relief from some of the other imposts that are being put onto us by government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Coombe.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to speak in support of what's before us and start just by acknowledging the real devastating impact of the pandemic on, and it is acknowledged that it's on the business community, but also the communities of Auckland in many different ways, and our vulnerable communities who are bearing the brunt of the restrictions. I do welcome that this paper is focusing on what we as council can do for businesses and what we need to advocate to government to strengthen their support for our businesses, especially as restrictions continue, because we've all heard stories of just how unsustainable it is, and that businesses that survived from the lockdown last year are really in a precarious position this year, because it's very, very different kind of lockdown, and as we know, there's sustained levels of uncertainty. So, this today, I do look forward to us having that conversation about what other support we can provide for other communities that are bearing the brunt of lockdown. But today, this is about what we can do for our businesses. And I did just want to focus in particular on F, and how we need to advocate to government to make changes around the alcohol licensing requirements, because as we know, we've seen a lot of flexibility from staff and attempts to really help the hospo sector around what we can do with street trading licenses, with supporting opening up into street space, anticipating what might happen under level 2. And when businesses are going to want to open up, use outside space. But we've got to a point where we can't go any further without legislative change and without support from government. So thank you, Madam Chair and Mayor, for including F in these recommendations. It's something that particular Councillor Hills and I have been keen to see in there, because it means that we can have the whole package of hospo being able to do alfresco dining over summer, when it's going to be still a very dynamic environment, probably a difficult environment, but at least we can do in Auckland streets what we've seen happening all over the world in the Northern Hemisphere summer, and now in Australia and Sydney, where they're having alfresco dining experiences, which is just taking what was happening inside in businesses that have the required licenses, that have gone through all of the checks, are just taking that to outside. And we don't know how it's going to work, but we've at least got to give hospo that chance. And so I'm really pleased that we're going to be advocating that to government to make that change, so that we have that flexibility. And of course, the Mayor's spoken about the fact that businesses need this enhanced business support package, and we have high expectations of what comes through tomorrow. And we've heard that. I've got 6 bids in the Waitemata local board area. If I claim 2 of your bids, Councillor Simpson, that are strictly in your ward, but they're all saying the same thing, that they've really got high expectations of what needs to come from government tomorrow. So just want to thank staff for the response to the call that went out to please bring together everything that we're doing to support business into one place, what's going on the website, and how we've got to improve those comms. That's been really appreciative, and also just how all the different parts of council are working together with the CCOs to try and be as innovative as possible and nimble to say, look, this is a whole new age of the pandemic, and we've just got to be able to operate really nimbly and flexibly, because we really couldn't anticipate that we'd be in this situation we are in at the moment. And as we go into summer, we really want to be able to just be able to provide all the support that we possibly can. So I think these resolutions, I hope they'll be warmly welcomed by the business community, who've been wanting to hear from us exactly what we are able to do and what we can support them with, and also what we can advocate to government for. So thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Mayor, for putting these forward. Really appreciative, and thank you to the team who've worked on this package. Really appreciate it. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and thank you to you and your worship as well for the excellent work in the offices. And I just wanted to reiterate the comments that have been made, and also point out the work that businesses are doing as part of the vaccinations. Look, the business community has not only warned the commercial impact of the lockdown, which has dragged on for months and months and months, and the aggregated numbers around the economic impact are pretty horrifying. But, Chair, it is the personal stories of those businesses that are affected. It is very raw, it's very personal, it's very visceral, and it is difficult
it is difficult to harden your heart to the stories that are out there. And I think that the council actually has demonstrated, in my view, the council has demonstrated the very best of a public service response to a pretty horrible, well, it's an appalling situation that has happened and continues to happen. It seems like it's going to go on for a long time to come. My request to His Worship, Phil, look, when you do reflect back to government on the economic impact of what has happened in Auckland, can you please make the point or reinforce the point that actually not only is the business community suffering, but Auckland's business community has helped to stand up many of the most successful vaccination events through the sponsorship that the businesses have given, which has enabled incentives. It's not all about incentives, but they have been crucial, and they're becoming more crucial at getting the hardest and most hesitant over the line. And that may make the difference to get all of the region over the line. And that is significantly due to the generous giving of those business owners who have little or nothing else to give. So I make that point because I think it is important to know. I think it's important for Wellington to understand that, because I don't think they do. But we are moving forward on vaccinations not only because we have to, but because it is a partnership, and Auckland's business community has a major role to play in that partnership, both now and as we move forward the next few weeks, as we mop up the last few who are yet to vaccinate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the extra work you've put into these motions to strengthen and embody them slightly greater. I want to support the Mayor's comments, but also those of Councillor Newman and Councillor Darby. This pandemic has reached right across all of Auckland. We have been the gateway city. We're the city with the MIQs in large numbers inside our town, and Delta is a whole new COVID variant that is spreading like wildfire. Whether it can be contained, I'm not an expert or not, but the hit has been enormous. So at level 4, the GDP loss to Auckland is 100 million a day, and at level 3, it's 50 million a day. The average business since COVID has been around with the combined lockdowns has cost that average business $675,000. Most businesses can't afford that sort of whack. These are the small and medium enterprises that employ people, create an embodied economy in an urban area. The businesses, together with the Employment and Manufacturers Association and the Auckland Business Chamber, have approached and written to Stuart Nash and the Minister of Finance asking for additional assistance over a number of areas. So actions to provide certainty around the framework for enabling businesses to open and operate safely with a domestic open date target of December 1. Direct financial support utilising existing funding mechanisms. Support for Auckland businesses through our regional business partner program funded $35 million from the government, and activation programs of $10 million to support local businesses, and a series of quick wins to get things moving, including alcohol regulations, fresco dining, and so forth. There is not one simple answer, Madam Chair, to any of the problems and questions that have been put, and the government's got a rock at a hard place. But Auckland has paid the price to help protect the rest of the country, and this is our Christchurch earthquake moment. We need greater assistance to get our economy back going. We need to have certainty, we need to open up as fast as we can, and we need to get those bubbles going across the Tasman again. If Auckland's 35% of the GDP of this nation, we can't afford to have one part of that big economy locked down in perpetuity. It's just not sustainable, and it needs to move forward. I really look forward to Minister Robinson's announcements tomorrow. I hope they're going to be answering some of the questions that Auckland businesses have put to the ministers this past week, and that we get some responses. I'd really like to acknowledge Nick Hill and the team at Auckland Unlimited for the work they've done coordinating, advising and putting data to these requests to the government. It's well founded, it's well resourced, and it needs now to be actually actioned upon. Certainty is going to be key for these businesses going forward, and for the employers, employees, and indeed for council. We cannot any longer continue to live in a fortress Auckland and in a vacuum of uncertainty. We must move forward. And I thank the Mayor for his leadership, and I also thank all the agencies for putting their hand up, working with Nick Hill and the team at Auckland Unlimited, but particularly to the businesses themselves who have stood up and said, we need assistance, this cannot go on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Very, very well, as others, that was a very good comment, as others have given. My next comment comes from the Deputy Chair, Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to first, of course, add my voice to the chorus, acknowledging the sacrifices that businesses have made. And obviously, particularly for smaller businesses, people go into these ventures with hopes and dreams. They've got families at home, they've got employees to pay. And this must be absolutely horrible to them, obviously financially, but also mentally. So we've got some serious challenges going forward, and obviously we try and bring as much business back up on their feet as we sort of enter into the new world, I guess. And I want to acknowledge this resolution and the staff and politicians that have worked on this. It's absolutely fantastic. I want to particularly also say Councillor Coombe and Councillor Hill's working really hard on the outdoor dining stuff. And actually, I think it's a good example of we can come out of this pandemic over time, and it will take a long time, but we can actually rebuild the kind of communities that we want to see. And actually, we might see that outdoor dining practices being more widely taken up is going to be something that will make Auckland a much more exciting place to live going into the decades. But also I want to lastly acknowledge that actually central government have done a lot of work in this area, and I think that needs to be acknowledged and appreciated. Things like the wage subsidy schemes, resurgence payments, the approach of putting public health first in the first place has really helped, obviously, keep businesses and consumers healthy and living in a lot of cases. And so there's been a lot of work done by central government, and I think that should be acknowledged and thanked as well.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I now have Councillor Bartley, and then I have Councillor Fletcher. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say I support the resolutions. I also agree with Councillor Henderson about what the government is doing in this space. I mean, we all knew the priority was trying to save people's lives, and that as a result of that, businesses wouldn't be the priority, and that there would be some economic loss. So it's weighing that up, saving lives, people's lives, or business economy. But it's good to see the support coming in from government for businesses, and good to see these resolutions. I say that because I am still delivering food parcels, and I know that it isn't just certain groups that everybody thinks that is suffering. It's wide ranging. So many people from different backgrounds are struggling. So whatever we can do to help all of Auckland is a good thing, especially in terms of these resolutions with the business community. So that's all I wanted to say. Oh, and also for Auckland Unlimited to acknowledge their work, but also if I could just promote what Tamaki Regeneration we're doing to support our local businesses in the first lockdown was really successful. So if there's anything that they can offer in terms of the local campaigns that they ran, then I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to appear ungracious by not acknowledging everybody, but I think that's already been done. My interest is in, if we get the opportunity through the governing body to look at this more widely, I still think there's a lot of misunderstanding existing in the public of what services they can and can't access. I had a long chat with somebody yesterday about whether they could go to the chiropractor or not, or whether it had to be an emergency situation, whether they could go to the dentist or not, whether, there's an awful lot of confusion that is out there that is not helping small business as well. So in a common sense, is there rather more that we can do to bring clarity around some of those things? This might be one of those conversations that's better had on a Tuesday morning when we come together to discuss COVID more generally. But right at the moment, we are all vulnerable in Auckland. We know that we're in for the long haul on this, and I think we've got to look at it as comprehensively as we possibly can. And the other thing I'd like to see is, and I sort of am echoing perhaps Councillor Cooper, who I thought made a really valuable contribution, but if ever there was a time that I would really like to see advocacy coming from the Auckland Council to say to both the Labour Party and the National Party, for goodness sake, can't the parties work together? This is the biggest unravelling of the city, the country that I've seen in my lifetime. I want to see people working together on this. We are all so vulnerable right now, and you've done some excellent work in bringing these recommendations to us, and not before time. You know, I think it's so appropriate that these are coming and the council is trying to respond. But I think we've got to respond also in terms of leadership to say we want the parties, the major political parties, working together on this. I really rate Grant Robertson. I think he's a fantastic individual, and I think he is one of the better ministers, and I would like to feel that he and Andrew Bailey can just sit down and find a way through this. You might feel that my comments are being far too political now. I don't care. It's something I feel passionately about. This is so hard on people. We don't know. We haven't had the briefings yet on the capabilities within our hospital system. We know the numbers of the projections that we've seen, but there's an awful lot of work that we need to do, and I hope if the matter comes to the governing body that we can give some comfort and some assurances, even if it's just down to helping people in really practical ways by foregoing some car parking or whatever it might be. I don't know, but I would really like to feel that if this is to be advocacy from the Mayor directly rather than from the council as such, that some reference point can be made to the Mayor, and also speaking to the Leader of the Opposition and saying this has to be a time when you're working together with the Prime Minister. So I realise time's up, so I'll leave it there. But I look forward to the work that we can put together for the governing body, and I thank you and all of the officers for bringing this paper together for Finance Today.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, I've got no other councillors who want to make a comment. So in conclusion, I want to say just a couple of points. First of all, COVID, whilst it is has initially had a health focus, it's the trouble it's caused has not just been to people's health, but it's been to their livelihoods and to their businesses and to their incomes. The purpose of today, however, is, and the name of the paper, is support for businesses. And I think that if business doesn't do well, Auckland doesn't do well. And there is no doubt in my mind that they are struggling at the moment. Some of you may have read an opinion piece I wrote for the Herald the other day, where I talked about the positive work that we'd done as a council, but also of the importance of business and the fact that we do have to do, that their success is our success, and we do have to help where we can. I want to acknowledge that the level of economic reduction as a result of business being shut down is huge for Auckland, and I believe that we are all collective in our desire to help where practical. I want to thank our finance staff, I want to thank our regulatory staff, and I want to thank Auckland Unlimited. And I want to thank, as well as those staff in those particular departments and parts of council, I want to thank Councillor Cooper for your work in the regulatory space. I want to thank Councillors Coombe and Hills for their work, and your worship, yours as well. This has been a series of recommendations that I felt very strongly about and wanted to highlight as much as I can to Aucklanders and to business that we are pulling out all stops to do what we can within the limits that we have. But of course, the real big point around this is that the key challenges for business, i.e. the economics of their problem, can't be made by us. They need to be made by government. And I think the plea in the recommendation to government is one of our strongest. They have the toolkit, not us. And for me, I am waiting with bated breath to see what they come up with on Friday. If you just look at the economics around that, if Auckland opens up and you go and buy the fridge that you haven't been able to buy now, and you go out to dinner twice in a month because you're trying to help local business, the tax and the GST on that goes to government. It doesn't come to us. So the benefit goes to government as well. So we've just tried to use the tools available to council to help business. I want them to do well. I'm sure you want them to do well. And the fact that the enhancement of these recommendations should hopefully reflect that. And in conclusion, I just want to say that this is step one. I believe council has a wider role to play in helping Auckland business and Aucklanders recover from COVID-19. And I think that discussion will be ongoing for us all. So I have moved these recommendations and they're seconded by the Mayor, and I will now put them to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against? I'd like to note that these resolutions have been passed unanimously. Thank you, committee.